Hello, I am sorry that I can't be there today to teach this first lesson in this unit, but I am going to explain as best as I can using this. So watch the video, take some notes, and ask the substitute if you have some questions. If you finish early, then you can go ahead and begin your homework in class. Okay, don't forget that even though you have an entire unit at one time in your binder, you need to still go ahead and put your name, the date, and the period. If somehow one of your papers gets misplaced, I will know who to get it to. All right, so starting with this section on squaring a number. Squaring a number is raising that number to a power of 2. For example, 4 squared is 4 times 4 is 16, because 4 times 4 is 16. When a negative value is squared, be careful to note whether or not the negative sign is inside the parentheses. Observe the differences below. So for example, right here, we have the negative 2 in the parentheses, which means we are going to square the negative 2. So we're going to write it like this, negative 2 times negative 2. Now, a negative times a negative is a positive, so negative 2 times negative 2 is going to be positive 4. On the other side, this is a little bit different. Because the negative is not inside the parentheses, we're just going to have a negative, and then we're going to do 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, and with the negative out front, we're going to have negative 4. Now, if you'll go ahead and pause this and try the next 2, then you can unpause it and see how you did. Okay, if on the negative 3 squared you did negative 3 times negative 3 and got positive 9, you did that correctly. If you want, you can go ahead and write out to the side the work like I'm doing just to help you for your notes. On this other side, again, we have the negative, and then we just have 3 times 3. So 3 times 3 is 9, and then we keep the negative in front. All right, now down to this next one. Negative 4 squared. The negative is in the parentheses again, so you're going to do negative 4 times negative 4, and a negative times a negative is a positive, so it's going to be positive 16. And then on this side, we keep the negative out front, and we just do 4 times 4. So 4 times 4 is 16, with the negative out front gives us negative 16. All right, good job. Let's scroll on down to the next section on square roots. Now, a square root looks like this, just so you know. All right, taking the square root is the inverse of squaring a number. So taking the square root is the inverse. It's kind of like the opposite. So like when we're solving equations and we see addition, we do subtraction. When we see multiplication, we do division. When we see square roots, we can square. Or if we see a square, then we can do the square root. They're inverses of each other. All right, the next bullet point. The square root of 16 is both 4 and negative 4. And here's why. Because 4 times 4, which can also be written this way, 4 squared, is 16, positive 16. And a negative 4 times a negative 4, which can be written this way, with negative 4 in the parentheses squared, is 16. The positive square root is known as the principal square root. And when using this radical sign, the solution is the positive square root. Additionally, 16 is called a perfect square because its square root is a whole number. All right, let's practice our memory of perfect squares and square roots by filling in this table below. All right, so starting with the squareds, 1 squared, 1 times 1 would be 1. 2 squared, 2 times 2 is 4. 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. 6 squared, 6 times 6 is 36. 7 squared would be 49. 8 squared, 64. 9 squared, 9 times 9 is 81. 10 squared, 10 times 10 is 100. 11 squared, 11 times 11 is 121. 12 squared, 144. And after this, you may not know these by memory, and I really don't want you to have a calculator out. You should not be using a calculator for this section. 13 times 13 is going to be 169, and if you ever had to, you could just go out to the side, just like you did in elementary school, and do 13 times 13 like this. And add straight down, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and help you with the 14 squared. 14 times 14 is going to be 196, and 15 times 15 is 225. All right. Now we're going to do the inverse. So the square root, we have to figure out the square root of what would be 1. So the square root of 1 would be 1. The square root of 4 would be 2. The square root of 9 is 3. So really we're just doing 1 times 1, 2 times 2 to get these numbers, 3 times 3, and so on. So if you want to pause this video and go ahead and finish this, and then you can start the video back up and see how you did, that would probably be a good idea. All right, those are the answers, so hopefully you did okay on that. If you need to pause it and make sure you have all of those written down correctly, please feel free to do so. All right, let's go on to the next page. So this says to evaluate the following squares and square roots. That means we need to calculate what the answer would be. All right, so this first one is just like what we were doing on the front page. So negative 7 squared is going to be negative 7 times negative 7, which would be, remember, a negative times a negative is a positive, so you're going to get 49. All right, on the second one, don't let the fact that it's a fraction scare you. You're still going, this is our base right here, and this is our exponent. So we just take our base and we times it by itself, however many times we have the exponent, just like this. All right, so multiply straight across. 2 times 2 is going to be 4. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, number 3. Is the negative inside the parentheses? No, it is not. So remember, that just kind of stays out to the side, and we just do our 9 times 9, which would be what? 81, but then you still leave the negative out front there. Okay, number 4. Now, number 4, we have a square root sign here, and we've got a negative out front. So you have to think about what the square root of 196 is. So if you want to, remember you're thinking of a number times itself, which if we go back to this page, you can see right here that the square root of 196 is 14. And if you look up above, 14 times 14 was 196. So this is going to be a negative 14. Now be very careful with number 5, because you see this decimal right here? So the square root, if that was just an 81, can you think of a number times itself that's 81? If you said 9, that would be correct. 9 times 9 would be 81, but this is 0.81. So it's actually going to be 0.9 would be the answer. And if you ever wanted to check it, you just do 0.9 times 0.9. Well, you know 9 times 9 is 81. And remember, when you're multiplying with decimals, you count that you've moved the decimal in once and twice, so you move it in 2 places, and that shows you that 0.81 is what was underneath the radical. Okay, number 6. Whenever you have a square root of a fraction like this, if you want to, if it's a little easier, you can do this. You can put the square root of the 9 and the square root of the 16. You can just take it one step at a time. So the square root of 9, a number times itself that's 9, would be 3, and a number times itself that's 16 would be 4. So the answer would just be 3/4. All right, let's come down here. Again, we're going to evaluate the following expressions. So this number 7 has a 2, and then it has the square root of 64 right next to it. But that's actually multiplication happening there. So we have 2 times, and then what is the square root of 64? What times itself is 64? If you said 8, that is correct. And then 2 times 8 would be 16. So that's how you do those. They're really not that difficult. Deal with the square root first. So like in this one, number 8, we've got 5 plus, and then you have to figure out what is the square root of 121. If you have to flip back to the front page, you can. It should be 11, and then 5 plus 11 is going to be 16. Okay, number 9 over here. All right, so again, the square root of 225 is going to be 15, and because we have this number out front, it's really times -3, and then we still have the plus 10. So -3 times 15 is going to be, calculate that. If you have to go out to the side and work it out, you can. You should not be using a calculator. All right, so that's -45 plus 10, -45 plus 10. Remember a little song that we learned about and you took a little test on with adding integers? These do not have the same sign. We've got a -45 and we got a positive 10. So since they're different signs, we have to find the difference. The difference between those would be, when you subtract them, is 35, and then take the sign of the higher number, so it's going to be a -35. I would love for you to pause this and see if you can do 10, 11, and 12 on your own, and then start it back up and see how you did. Okay, let's see how you did. On number 10, the square root of 144. What number times itself is 144? Well, it would be 12. Minus, and the square root of 36. What times itself is 36? 6. 12 minus 6 is 6. Number 11. Remember when you have a number right beside a radical like this, 15 square root of 16 means 15 times the square root of 16. If you have to write it out like that, you can. Well, the square root of 16, you should know what times itself is 16. That would be 4. So 15 times 4 is what you need to calculate. And the answer would be 60. And number 12, the square root of 81. What number times itself is 81? It's going to be 9. And then don't forget to bring this negative out here. Plus 20. So -9 plus 20, different signs, find the difference. 20 minus 9 is going to be 11, and then 20 is bigger, so it's positive 11. Okay, we got 2 little word problems down here, and then we're going to be finished. Number 13 says, a group of 225 students needs to be arranged in a square formation for a halftime performance. How many students should be lined up in each row? So if we're going to make a square, we know that a square is the same length and width on each side, okay? And so all the way around it's the same. So basically you're trying to figure out the square root of 225 because you've got to have the same number for the length and the width. So what times itself is 225? 15. So 15 times 15 is 225, which means we have to have 15 rows. So like let me use a different color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to 15. Okay, we'd keep going. And then this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 15. Okay, so the answer is 15 students would have to be in each row. All right, the last problem, number 14. Ivan's room is a square, okay, again a square, with an area of 144 square feet. What is the perimeter of Ivan's room? Okay, so let's just draw a picture of his room first of all. There's a square room, okay? and they tell us that the area in here is 144 square feet, so feet squared is how we write it. Okay, well, if this is a square, we know that it's got to be the same here and here. So what times itself is 144? If you said 12, that's correct. So 12 times 12 would be 144, so that means the length on each side of the square is 12. But the question says, what is the perimeter of Ivan's room? So think about what perimeter means. First of all, if this is a square, it's going to be 12 on all of the sides. Perimeter means to add up all the sides. So we're going to have 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12. If you want to group them, you can. That would give us 24 plus 24, which is going to be 48 feet is the perimeter of his room, because you have to add up all the way around. So you have to pay attention if it's talking about area or if it's talking about perimeter. All right, good. If you have time left in class, go ahead and start your homework, please. And please make sure that it's complete.